started. It's just 7 o'clock. Good evening. I'm Sasha Tracy, for those of you that don't know me. And this is my first school district meeting as moderator, so please be kind. And it's my pleasure to be here and to welcome all of you to Jackson's annual school district meeting. There are a couple of thank yous that we wanted to extend before we get started tonight. I wanted to thank Tim Scott, my predecessor, for 20 years of service in this community as moderator and for taking the time to upload me on this important role. I also wanted to thank all of you for coming out tonight. You don't have to be here, and participating in local government is really important, so thank you. And I know Jerry has a special thank you that he would like to offer this evening as well.
Yeah, I would like to extend a very big thank you to Becky Jefferson and all the years of service that you provided for the town of Jackson and Jackson School.
I just wanted to thank Becky as well. She was here, I've been here 12 years or something, and you have made the financial aspect of the school system actually understandable. And it really isn't. If you're on the school board, you know that numbers and years and everything else just flow together, and you have been able to answer every question with ease, which is scary, okay, for us normal people. So thank you so much. I really wish you much luck and success and health on your next adventure.
Thank you.
All right, and please stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jackson has a special place in my heart. And I'm sure that all of you know, but I did attend Jackson Grammar School. Way a long time ago, 20 students in the school. They tried to close the school multiple years under thinking about the superintendent who actually hired me. So it was prior to Tyrell at the time coming in, which was a big room for the Jackson Grammar School. So it is a special place, and I'm going to wish you luck. Thank you.
And now I could ask all of you to please rise and join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So my oath as moderator is to be impartial and ensure fair and equitable meeting this evening. So before we get started, there are a few points of order that I'd like to go over with all of you. The first is that everyone that's here tonight is welcome to speak. When you do, I would ask that you begin by stating your full name, even if you think we know it. It's important to have it for the minutes. If you could please keep your comments to a reasonable amount of time so we can let others have a chance to speak. And if you're not a Jackson resident, if you could please state your town when you state your name and share your comments. Finally, if you speak on a subject matter and you wish to speak again, if you would just be patient and let others in the room have an opportunity before you make a second comment on a particular matter, it would be appreciated. And lastly, there are a lot of different opinions in this room tonight, and we're all members of one community, and so I would just ask to please let civility rule, to know that we may not agree, but we share this community, and we all have an opportunity to share those views tonight. As the first order of business tonight, I would like to ask for a motion to dispense with the reading of the checklist.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brilliant. Thank you. Second, I'd like to ask for a motion to dispense with the reading of the full warrant. We'll read each individual item as we proceed.
So moved. Second.
Second. Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll move on to reading the individual warrants. Article 1. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $2,724,690 in support of the schools for payments of salaries for district officials and agents and for payment of the statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles and is recommended unanimously by the school board.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. There's a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, if you would raise your hand. Terrific. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Article 2, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to be added to the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund previously established for this purpose in 2010. This article is recommended unanimously by the school board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That's easy. Article 3.
Such a point of order.
Yes.
Can everyone in the room hear okay?
No.
I don't know if you wanted to, you can speak up a little bit or...
Sure. Yep, I'll speak up, and if anyone can't hear, would you just do me the favor, just raise your hand and I'll grab a microphone. It seemed there was some people that heard better with a microphone and some without, so just give me a wave if you can't hear me. So Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $10,000 to be added to the expendable general trust fund, the school building maintenance fund established for this purpose in 1996. This article is recommended unanimously by the school board as well.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Article 4, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $95,000 to purchase a school bus and authorize the withdrawal of $60,000 from the capital reserved fund for school buses, previously established for this purpose. The balance of $35,000 is to come from general taxation. Again, this is unanimously supported by the school board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I was wondering if,
Do you mind stating your name?
I'm sorry, Dick Bennett. I live in Jackson, or Dundee, and I was wondering if there's any consideration of a smaller bus. I know that in the past that, you kicked it around, but I would think that, you see that big bus driving around with a few kids in it, and if you consider a smaller lease.
Jim, I'll let you take it. You are the expert on it, so...
Jim Hill, S89, Conway resident. That's all I'm looking forward to. We have talked about a smaller bus. I think what it comes down to is you have a couple times a year where you'll have a bus break down, or you'll have a driver that's out sick or for whatever reason, so then you're down to one bus. And if it's and sometimes it's at the last minute or during the bus route. If you have a smaller bus, then you're limited to the number of students you can transport. So you're doing the entire town at that point with one bus. The other part is field trips, is once you get a smaller bus, sometimes you can get limited to which buses, because usually the regular buses become the spare buses, and those are often used for field trips. That if you have a smaller bus, here's a 66 passenger, then you may be required to take two buses on a field trip instead of just taking one. The third part is, unless you're getting down to the size of a wheelchair accessible bus, the savings of going from a 66 passenger down to, I don't know what the next size is, whether it's 55 or 44, you're literally just saving sheet metal. You're talking a couple of $1,000s. The engine is the same, the axles are the same, the brakes are the same, the suspensions are the same. So the amount that you're saving, particularly in this town, the 10 to 12 year life of that bus, when you divide it over those number of years, is very, very small.
Oh, Madam Chair.
And last year, we didn't talk about it much in this past year, but the year before, we took a long, hard look at it, and we did really look at the idea of of going down to a smaller bus and then down to even a microbus. And for all the reasons Jim just said, that we considered it really not worth doing it. But it is something that's good to ask us every year that we're going to buy a new bus to consider it, because it is something that we shouldn't just never consider again.
Sarah?
Sarah Clemens. A question, how many years do we keep our bus? And, for instance, I understood that Bartlett loves us because they usually buy our old buses. Is that true?
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Hill again. This bus is 10 years old. It has 115,000 miles on it. You guys used to replace them like at under 100,000 miles, and I would go crazy and what you're doing. But I will assure you that when you sold that bus to Bartlett, they spent an exorbitant amount of money fixing it up the following year. So you did well to get rid of it when you did.
Just 1 second, Sarah, I just wanted to check in. Kevin, did you have a comment?
I just had a question. Does a new school bus really cost $190,000?
No, it's just.
Just a sticker shock. I was just surprised.
I'm sorry, how much did you say?
Did I read this right? 95,000 plus 60,000 plus 35,000.
I think we have a school board member who's just wanted.
So just 2 points of clarification, and just to add on to what you said, the schedule that we've kept would have had us getting a new bus last year, but taking the advice of the people that know the most about it, we deferred that for a year. So when we looked at it this year, we thought, we've already pushed it for a year. But as far as the expense goes, the expense is $95,000. And what we decided to do was take money out of a reserve fund that we keep for just such events so that we could minimize the burden on the taxpayers. So what you have here is you've got the 60 is going to be coming from capital reserve, 35 will be the tax burden. So we were trying to offset that. And I will say this, it was a bit of a surprise when I was on the budget committee. It was a bit of a surprise when we looked at the amount for it, because I think it was originally 75, but because of tariffs and things like that, it was more expensive than we were expecting.
Thanks, Jess. Sarah, I see you. Is there anyone else that has a question or a comment in this discussion? And then I want to recognize Sarah again. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Sarah.
Sarah Clemens. I just wondered, we are constantly hearing about being green. And I would like to know if possibly you see the kids get on and off the bus every day. How many children actually use the bus? We all know that we had just a little bit ago, Kennett having a problem with parking. Is there any way that, constantly hearing about being green, not having, all of the traffic and saving on fossil fuels and so on and so forth. It amazes me to see these buses, the high school level, and 4 kids on it, or whatever, and knowing that parking lot over there is filled with private cars. Is there any way it could be mandatory that they take the bus? And it would save us, it would be green, it would save us fuel, so on and so forth, but it just seems that there are a multitude of people, young people, that own their own cars or are very fortunate to have 3 or 4 cars in their family.
Sarah, I think you make a really good point. And what you're talking about would be a bold and very intelligent initiative. In the short term, that's not what we have. We're required by law to provide transportation, so we have to, even if it's just for 1 kid. But it is something that communities should really start to consider and have hard conversations about, is how do we transport ourselves, and what rules can we make to require something like that so it becomes better. I think what you're talking about, though, is probably take a state law change. Again, it would be a bold initiative and something worthy of looking at in the future.
If I may also, we have so many students here that are involved in extracurricular activities and athletics, and the same with the elementary school. We have an after-school program, so the buses aren't always filled with every student, but there are many days where we need that capacity, but not every day. So when you see the buses going by and it appears that there aren't a lot of students, maybe it's a good thing as well because they're on the ski team and they're out doing those co-curricular activities after school as well. And many of them need their own cars to drive back and forth for those.
And some of the little kids, just to add, you can't see from the window.
Any further discussion on Article 4? And I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All those in favor? Any opposed? The article passes. Article 5, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund for Special Education previously established for this purpose. And this article is recommended unanimously by the school board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those, oh, Emily?
Sorry, I just have one question. Emily Benson, Jackson. Is this the same amount each year that's usually done? Yeah, it's always.
So we had capped this out originally when we created the fund. And by capping out, meaning we decided that we're going to put in more than $100,000. And it grew pretty quickly to 110. And we've been recommended that that's not going to be enough should we have indication that we might have to use it. And in fact, even what we're asking for still probably isn't enough for what our expenses could be. So it's kind of like a rainy day fund. So we might be asking a little bit more for the next few years. And we usually don't put $25,000 into it. In fact, we haven't put anything into it for the last 5 years since it's been capped out. So we're going to try to hopefully grow it over the next few years so that it's there should it be necessary. So.
Jess?
And just to provide a little context, Pam can please correct me if I'm wrong, but again, when we were looking at it, one out-of-district placement is about $220,000. So that's what we're looking at in terms of if we were to have that happen, right? And that could happen unexpectedly. We want to make sure that we're prepared for that. That's why we want to build it up. Because right now we have about $117,000 in that reserve fund. So that's why we're taking this initiative to kind of get that up there. And the other thing is we're finding that special ed costs, while they vary from year to year, we have seen some increases in that. So it's something we need to pay attention to.
Any further discussion on Article 5? All those in favor? And those opposed? Article 6, to see if the school district will vote to approve the 3-year tuition contract with Bartlett School District for the Jackson 7th and 8th grade students to attend Josiah Bartlett Elementary School. This article is recommended unanimously by the school board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second? There was a second. Well, any discussion?
Dick Dunn, I was reading, what's the 2% revenue?
That is basically in lieu of, Jim or Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's basically in lieu of having any capital costs that we share with Bartlett for their facility. So it's actually, I don't know, Becky, you might have helped figure out that number to some extent.
Yeah.
It's much less than what we would be contributing to Bartlett's capital expenses for maintaining the buildings there. So it's basically a way to put into the contract a way that we contribute to some to their capital expenses and their maintenance costs without actually having an ownership stake in it.
Thank you.
And it was figured out mathematically as far as what that number should be. It wasn't just, we'll throw out 2%. It was based on kind of what their costs are, kind of reflected on probably equalized valuation maybe, and what the building costs are. So.
Thanks, Jerry. Any other questions or comments on Article 6? All those in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, I have it. Which brings us to Article 7. Is there any other business that anyone wishes to transact this evening?
Betsy Harding, Jackson resident. I just have a question. After last year's quite controversial meeting about the preschool, what's being done at this point? Is there progress
toward that or not toward that?
Justin, Wilson.
Sure. So, as you've probably seen from our minutes, we elected not to move forward this year because we had been looking to have space on campus and we could not find that to make that work. So, what we've decided to do is keep looking. And the big initiative right now, Jerry and I spoke with Bob Thompson a month or two ago, and one of the things we realized is that we have public space that we each use and that we're each responsible for. And there's not a ton of collaboration as far as looking at long-term needs of the community, right? You might have a committee here or a group here or different boards and things like that. So one of the things we were hoping to do was get together and have a group like New Hampshire Listens come in and do some community listening posts to kind of see where are our needs and what actually needs to happen, as far as those things go. So on our end, we would want to look at that so we can look at space, because we had looked at the old library, we had looked at the church basement, we had looked at the Whitney Center, things like that, but we don't have a perfect solution. And so we thought that's something we needed to do. And in that conversation, what I learned, because I'm fairly new to all of this, was that we had done some strategic planning as a town many years ago, but we haven't done much of that in a while. So you have different interest groups might come forward to do some strategic planning for the town, but we're not doing it as joint boards. So that's where we're at right now. We're in the process. Hopefully, Jerry and Bob and I, again, when we met, the ball was kind of in the selectmen's court. Hopefully, they're setting that up. That was the last that we had heard about that. And the idea was that it would start in April. I don't know if that will actually happen. I can assure you we are trying to follow up on that. The other thing is we thought maybe we would revisit some of the spaces that we had looked at that had been turned down before. So, for example, the art room was something we had looked at initially, but was taken out of contention for various reasons. Things are sort of back on the table, especially because we know now that our needs are changing even more as a community, right? At any given time, we've got a different snapshot of the community. We know now that Mountain View Montessori is closing, and we actually have folks in this room who were on a waiting list to try to get a spot for their kids. So that matters for our kids' education. So it's on our minds. It's not being pushed to the side. We would love to help get a meeting going for the town to kind of look at those public spaces to see if there's support. Lots of you have longer institutional memories than we do. So if you have things that you can give us as far as information and insight, by all means, bring them in.
And just to add to that, I know it's my intention and other members of the board's intention that a preschool is passed next year. My hope.
Any other business anyone wishes to bring up this evening before we close the meeting? Well, thank you all for being here. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to dissolve this evening's meeting with appreciation for all of your participation.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.